Before getting to the teleological argument, I just want to talk about that first point a little bit more. On page 199, Gould, in reflecting on the quote from Darwin, writes, "The universe, for all we know, may have an ultimate purpose and meaning. Quote, I am inclined to look at everything as resulting from design laws." Unquote. That's a quote from Darwin, repeating himself, what he had quoted before. And Gould continues, "These ultimates may be set by a rational and transcendent power legitimately called God, but the resolvable subject matter of science falls into another realm below the purview of such philosophical and probably unknowable generalities. Moreover, these smaller and knowable facts unfold in a world composed of so many complex parts that prediction of the future, not to mention inferences about ultimate meanings of the totality, cannot be achieved with certainty. We may use the laws of nature and our knowledge of specific conditions to explain and understand particular events, and even, as the highest goal of science, to construct general theories about factual patterns in nature. We can know what and how and even why in the special sense of explaining particular facts by invariant laws of nature and properties of materials, but science has no access to questions of ultimate why expressed as overarching purpose or eternal value. Well, I think it's partially true what he's saying here, what Gould is saying. Um, uh, Aristotle, for example, said that each science, and he wasn't talking about natural science, but like philosophy and different branches, subdivisions of philosophy. Each science has its own methodology. So, in natural theology, which is a science in the Aristotelian sense, a branch of knowledge, a subject one can study in school, um, that is going to have different methods than um, doing an experiment in a lab. However, that doesn't mean that there's no knowledge to be found there, no certainty to be obtained. We can prove with certainty that God exists, um, with the ontological argument, say. That's a deductive, valid proof. It's sound. It's undeniable rationally that there is a God. So, um, in that respect, Gould is wrong when he says that we can't really be certain about these other things. But he is right in the sense that there's a different organon, if you will, a different way to approach biology than there is to approach theology, say. Um, but science really can't answer. He's right when he says that science can't answer the ultimate why questions. So when people like Richard Dawkins and perhaps Carl Sagan, when they start talking about God not being able to exist, probably not existing, and so on, uh, what they seem to be doing is conflating evolution, evolutionary biology, or science in general, with atheism, and that is a non sequitur, the non sequitur of all non sequiturs. Atheism, if evolution could be shown to be 100% absolutely certain, um, that does not say anything for or against the existence of God. Nothing. They're not the same thing. Okay, so you can't conflate evolution and atheism. Alright, then he's continuing on. He's talking about how we should keep science and religion separate, but still respect both of them, and so on. He says, to show that I am not presenting an odd and personal exegesis of Darwin's statement about details, whether good or bad, left to the working out of what we may call chance, we may trace his own explication in a beautifully crafted set of examples, moving from undeniable commonplaces to challenging implications that we would rather not accept, all designed to convince his conventionally devout colleague Asa Gray Darwin moves slowly and cautiously, but ever so systematically. If a man caught on top of a hill during a thunderstorm dies by lightning, the event surely has a scientific explanation based on general laws of meteorology. That's getting into the stuff about chance, which I don't know if I want to do. But yeah, let me skip ahead to this paragraph on page 201. Darwin, and this is what Darwin was writing to Asa Gray about. So in Gould's words, Darwin has now reached the crux of his argument. The births and deaths of individuals may be explained naturally, but such scientific reasons do not imply either necessary occurrence in a deterministic universe or moral meaning under God's omnipotence. At this point, a believer in the old order, preferring God's moral presence in factual events to Noma's insistence on the separation of magisteria, might say, fine, God doesn't busy himself with the fates of individuals. He grants this space to the ancient doctrine of free will, but God surely controls larger patterns and generalities for moral ends. He may allow the birth of an individual to fall outside his purview, but he will not so neglect the birth of an entire species, especially not the origin of Homo sapiens, the apple of his eye, the incarnation of his image, and the ultimate goal of all that came before. And that I don't think that's an accurate understanding of a sophisticated Christian worldview. God, it's hard to say precisely exactly what we mean by God's sovereignty. I'm not a Calvinist. It would be easier perhaps if I was a Calvinist. But I think that God does have a will, does have a plan, and everything that happens is in accord with that plan in some sense. But I think there is a general pattern that God is guiding throughout history, and natural history as well. But also, like each individual birth, each individual death doesn't take him by surprise. It's according to his plan. So it's not. It's a little misleading to say that God is directly causing all these events that happen, but there is some truth in that. God is in control of all that happens. He's sovereign over all. He's Lord of all. He's Lord of Lords. So if a person dies prematurely, then it's really not a premature death because God had planned that in a sense. But that doesn't mean that we should blame God for killing children and so on. It's a very complex question, and it just seems to be glossed over here too superficially. So exactly how to spell it out, I'm not going to say here, but I think that Darwin and Gould's retelling of Darwin's thoughts is oversimplifying what's going on. And yes, Homo sapiens do seem to be the climax of evolution. That's not to say that there won't be more, some kind of Superman or meta-human some point down the road. But it does seem that in some sense, mankind is metaphysically superior to all other biological entities. And that seems like it would be part of a plan of a deity. Um, Darwin apparently doesn't think so. Gould apparently doesn't think so. But I think that's the most logical assumption to draw from natural history. Well, now I'm going to, in part 3, get into the teleological argument. Thank you. Shalom.